At $200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on the Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES broadcast with your hosts, Soulblazer and George.
Hello everybody, welcome to Super NES Podcast, episode number 103 coming at you this time. I am Greg, joined always by George.
Groovy.
Yes, gnarly for sure. This is a throwback game.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a game that screams 90s to me. I'm not sure about you, but...
It screams something. Or maybe that was just me screaming. I don't know.
You may be the person I know who should like this game, because this game's gotten a lot of love and praise over the years. So, but we will get into it.
We'll get into something, all right.
We are doing another Patreon supporter pick this time. Chad, one of our Patreon backers, who previously had picked Lemmings for us to cover, had her second game. We offered him a second game because we discontinued the highest tier that we had that they originally had on the Patreon. So as a consolation prize, we allowed him to pick a second game, and he came us with the Earthworm Jim, which is the first game of franchise that is technically it's a run and gun platformer game, though it does have some other stage aspects to it, which we'll get into as the game. Like to talk about the game, which was developed by Shiny Entertainment and published by Playmates Interactive in North America and Virgin in Europe back in 1995. This is a game I had always known about. I played the game a little bit on the PlayStation version. PlayStation. Was it PlayStation? No, it wasn't. George and I were talking PlayStation before we started recording, so I got still on the brain here. But the Windows version of the game, a couple years after it came out at a friend's house. So that's my one exposure to the game until we started playing it for the podcast. And I'm guessing for George's tone, he has never played this game before until now.
I probably tried to stay away from it.
Because you're not a huge platformer fan, are you?
This is not my type of game.
Well, the game certainly has a very rich history to it, which is actually pretty interesting. We'll talk a little bit about both the developer and the publisher because we haven't talked about either of these companies before in the past. Shiny Entertainment has a pretty good. Had a pretty good track record for their relatively short period of time. They were making games. It was going back in 1993, and they had they immediately signed their publishing contract with Playmates, which is why Playmates published most of their games in North America, and their very first game was actually Earthworm Jim. So, the first game, that's pretty good. They also went on to develop the sequel. They also developed the 3D action game MDK. Have you heard about that game, George?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. So, they also made Wild 9, Messiah, Sacrifice, some games based off the Terminator Matrix series, and the last game was The Golden Compass in 2007. They then 2007 were merged with Foundation 9 to form a new company, Double Helix Games, which developed Silent Hill: Homecoming, Front Mission Evolved, G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra, Battleship, the new Killer Instinct game, Strider, and a game called UFOs Love Cows. I have no idea.
What? What?
I have no idea. Don't ask.
I just did. Too late.
And
jeez, what?
and they're actually now owned by Amazon. I didn't know Amazon had purchased.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know Amazon had purchased any video game companies. They did. So.
Interesting.
Yes. So pretty good track record for the over the years. Most of their games were at least received middling reviews, if not great reviews. So, and Playmates, like, you know what Playmates is, right? Playmates is a huge toy company.
Yes.
Like a whole bunch of they mostly make like toys based off like big licenses.
Right.
Action figures, cars, that kind of stuff. So,
I prefer car action figures.
car action figures are pretty cool. Transformers, GoBots, the like. So, yep.
Yes.
This was during a time. This is during a time like in the '90s when a lot of companies were getting involved in video games, at least publishing them. So Playmates figured, I figured that'd be profitable to publish games. So
yeah, video games are still seen as toys in this era.
Yeah. So but their publishing contract was only for North America. Virgin Interactive handled the publishing of Earthworm Jim, like in Europe, as I mentioned previously, because Virgin was a much more bigger company in Europe during this time period.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Earthworm Jim was a very popular game, so it got ported to numerous systems,
including newer ones.
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
The actual first version of the game to come out, even though they were developed at the same time, the Genesis version of the game came out first. The Genesis version came out in August. The Super NES version got released 2 months later, like in October. Later on, ports of the game also appeared on the Game Boy, the Sega Game Gear, the Sega CD, DOS, Windows 95, and the GBA.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's also a remake of the game that was done in 2010 by a company called Gameloft. Gameloft's a pretty good company. I've enjoyed like some of their games over the years. They got the rights to the franchise. They published a high definition remake, like the PS3 and Xbox 360 called like Earthworm Jim HD.
And you're telling me they didn't remake Earthworm Jim 64? Why is that?
There's a reason for that. Nobody has fond memories of that one.
Why not?
So, I've not played Earthworm Jim HD, but I looked at some video on YouTube. It looks pretty good. I've heard mixed things about the game. Some people enjoyed the changes, and some people didn't. But
yeah, I've heard complaints about it, but I feel like people on this surface level, I feel like people wouldn't really have a real issue with it. It's slightly different or whatever, but
right, yeah,
it's whatever.
Yeah. So Playmate Toys actually was the one who came up with the idea of came up with the idea for Earthworm Jims. They were having huge success during this time period, like the license for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff, and it's like they wanted to build off of that. They wanted to make a franchise that was somewhat similar to that in some ways, but also different enough so not to have any problems. So TMNT was a direct inspiration for Earthworm Jim. So curiously enough, so was the Sonic Hedgehog series.
Really?
Yeah, they definitely wanted to. They wanted to make a game that was played a little bit kind of like Sonic, and kind of start the franchise off of the video game, and then put into other stuff with toys and whatnot later on afterwards. Flag was success. It did well. So the company came up with an idea of an Earthworm, and they gave it Shiny. And Shiny from there took the idea ran with it. And Shiny was told they could pretty much go nuts with the game, and they did, because the whole...
It looks like it.
Yeah. The whole atmosphere, world, characters, etc. And Shiny said, we always had been restricted in the past to doing licensed games, and this still holds very true, to this day and age. Back then, probably more so now, but especially back then, companies most developers, their bread and butter was licensed games. They were given a license, like they were told an idea from a big company like Disney or like Nintendo or whatnot, and said, "Here, make a game based off this character or like this idea," and that's what they did. And that brings in the money. That the money that keeps the that kind of work that keeps the doors open, but your creativity is stymied by that because there's really only so much you can do with it because it's a license. You can't veer too much off the beaten path with like that, or risk offending like Disney or whoever like has the rights to the characters. So when a developer is given the chance to be able to go off on their own and actually make something like their own, like a passion project, and not be constrained by any kind of license, they can go pretty nuts. And Earthworm Jim's like a pretty good example of that.
Yep.
So, and this is still true nowadays too. Probably like more so true like nowadays. Like so many companies, like just put out license stuff just to make money, and, keep the doors open.
I mean, look at the Metal Gear Solid series.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
That's completely nuts.
So, I definitely could see inspiration from TMNT and Sonic playing this game. There definitely are. There certainly are elements like most things I can see in this game. So it kind of makes sense that that they kind of were like inspired by those franchises.
Yeah.
The Super NES version is pretty similar, pretty similar like Genesis version. The graphics are slightly altered. They're a little bit better, I think. But that's just a matter of like personal taste, I think. There are some slight noticeable differences in the graphics between the two versions of the game. Curiously enough, some sound effects are missing in the Super NES version of the game that the Genesis version of the game had.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, why? I have no idea.
The SNES can't handle the power of the Genesis.
It's also the Super NES version. The Super NES version also has is also missing one level.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of bad.
The Genesis version of the game has one extra bonus level, and Shiny said that that level was removed because that level used certain hardware elements the Genesis could do easier than Super NES could.
Oh.
So
what I said was right.
Yeah. Essentially, yes. So the Sega CD version of the game was also a pretty significant upgrade like to the cart version of the game. Had a new level. Some of the levels had extended sections to them. The soundtrack was totally redone like in CD format. There was also like extra. There was also extra frames of animation added, like over 1,000 frames apparently. So again, the Sega CD version kind of sounds like the Sega CD version kind of sounds like the version of the game to own, as far as like probably like the best version of the game, because the extra stuff that was on there. Obviously the handheld version of the game were kind of like watered down a little bit because of the smaller cart size. But the MS-DOS and Windows version of the game is pretty similar like the Sega CD and Genesis version of the game. The GBA version, however, was done by a company called the GBA version was done by a company called Game Titan, which is pretty much, and it was supposed to be a port of the Super NES version, but they did a pretty terrible job with it.
I haven't even bothered with that.
Yeah, to put it mildly.
Oof.
People bashed that version of the game horribly because it ran.
Is that the only game they've done, or
no? They did others. They just simply they just totally dropped the ball on support the game for whatever reason.
Was this the first one they've done?
I don't know. I didn't research the company, so I can't.
Okay.
But this version of the game apparently ran very poorly, had poor animation, missing details, and some buggy sound. So
that's considering that the GBA is
essentially a souped up Super NES.
Yes and no, but essentially it's like, but I think it's like more powerful or whatever.
Oh, definitely
like,
powerful.
It's just it's ridiculous how you couldn't even with the power you couldn't even just make something decent. That's sad. It sounds like they didn't even try.
And if you want to play the original versions of the game, the Genesis version was available on the Wii Virtual Console like for a while. And
Too bad you can't get it now.
Well, the DOS version.
You could probably pirate a version and put it on the Wii.
The DOS version, however, is still available on GOG and Steam.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that.
It's a pretty much straightforward 16-bit version. It's like and since again, Curious and I were talking about DOSBox before the podcast.
Yeah, that's weird.
I'm sure everyone's fine. There was a version of the game that was playing up the Jaguar, both the Jaguar and the Jaguar CD. It got pretty far along, never got finished because the guy who was developing the port quit the company.
Is that game out on the internet now, or is it gone forever?
It's unfortunately, it's unfortunately lost. It looks like.
That stinks.
Well, it may still exist in some form. People.
Yeah, probably in some company's basement that that nobody's even touched in 20 years or something. You know.
Well, the alpha version of the game was shown off at a trade show shortly before the game got canceled.
Okay.
All it apparently existed up at that point was just like basic character animations. The game probably, based upon this, I'm guessing the game's probably, I'm guessing the game was probably only about like maybe 50% done. But that source code is currently lost. It'd
still be interesting to take a look at. I like looking at unfinished games or
same here,
unreleased games or whatever. Yeah.
Yep. So it's probably lost. Maybe one day it might be found.
Lost but not forgotten.
Right.
It's actually hidden in the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier.
That's pretty funny. So, Earthworm Jim at its surface, it's like your basic platformer game with some very funky characters and gameplay concepts.
I would say that they're groovy.
Groovy, yes.
Groovy.
The game has 7 levels. There's also 3 bonus and hidden levels, like in the game as well, also, which are shorter than the regular levels of the game. The game's length is pretty average for a platformer game. The whole game in about an hour.
Yep, that sounds about right.
So it's not like an overly long game. The story is really funky and kind of out there. Definitely something you get the kind of story you can imagine, made up by 3 guys who are operating 4 hours of sleep, trying to come up with some kind of
Sure, let's go with 4 hours of sleep. Yeah, that's what it is. Yep.
A crazy idea for a plot. Essentially, Jim is an earthworm who's been given special powers to save the planet.
Yeah, he gets this suit.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So you could to go around the game as this funky looking character. He looks kind of like a bodybuilder, except the head is obviously kind of weirdly shaped.
Well, I mean, he's literally an earthworm.
Oh yeah.
He's an earthworm in this weird suit that is also the body of somebody or something. I don't know, but it's really weird. But he's also super buff.
Right.
But funny enough, you never punch anybody or anything. You just use yourself as a weapon, or you use the gun, obviously. But,
right. Yeah.
It's weird. He didn't have to be so buff then, huh?
Well, yep. And besides the so besides the blaster, besides the blaster, he also takes a page from Simon Belmont and has a whip, which you can both use a weapon and also by swing from hooks.
It's like a multi-tool he's got there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Except he is the multi-tool. Oh no, this is just when Microsoft brought out the Kinect. You are the controller. He is the multi-tool. Oh no.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of connection I'm making. Just go on.
So having 2 weapons is pretty good because most platformer games, you only have like 1 weapon to use. So I like the fact they have like 2 weapons here.
Yeah.
So because certain obstacles, certain obstacles and enemies, you have to use like 1 weapon. You have to use like 1 weapon. You have to use like 1 weapon like the other, instead of be able to advance. So so yeah. So he's like so. So your task to go through the stages, trying to avoid enemies. This is one of those like one of those like one hit you're dead games, unfortunately. But I certainly would appreciate like how
What are you talking about?
that. Oh, sorry.
One hit and you're dead? Where'd you get that from?
Well, in some
you
of
have
the
a
areas,
health bar or a health meter or whatever.
Oh yeah, sorry. It's like I probably should say like certain enemies can do like one hit deaths.
Okay, yeah,
but,
that makes sense.
Yeah, the hit percentage is expressed to the top of the screen as like a percentage. So
You collect like atoms or something to heal yourself. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting. Your lives, your variable lives is also shown. Your variable lives is also shown. It's also shown in the corner of the screen with a very funky looking earthworm to reflect that.
Yep.
It's very strange to look at. Yeah,
It's just an earthworm. What's wrong with being an earthworm?
Yeah, mostly horizontal action. There's some vertical. There are some stages that require some like vertical action. And each stage is a boss in it. So again, pretty standard. Pretty standard design as far as the overall game itself
I mean,
goes.
there's a bunch of levels that are actually pretty creative because.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There could be one developer that's like, oh yeah, he's just an earthworm, blah blah blah. This developer was like, yeah, but he also he can use himself as a whip,
Right.
or he can get tangled in fans or whatever and go flying across the screen, or he can use his head and attach to hooks and whatnot, and he can, there's what is it, those like glass bubbles or whatever,
Right,
when you're
yeah.
in the water stages. Like, there's just a bunch of stuff to this game. A lot of it isn't really repeated. It just like he keeps integrating new things
Right.
over the course of the gameplay, and that's really cool because they could have just made it a platformer where you just jump around and stuff, and maybe you hook yourself onto things once in a while, but they were really throwing things at the wall, and honestly, I don't know if they were using glue or what, but it really stuck. So
Yeah, definitely. I was going to say that, but you did a very good job explaining that because I was trying to say, even though the design of the game is pretty simple, the actual level design and the enemies themselves, I thought at least like very, very creative. So I'm kind of glad you felt
they
the
like
same
threw
way.
a slice of ham at the wall and it stuck.
Yeah, most of it did. There were some parts that I didn't like that much, but
I didn't like playing this game at all. But everything else, it was nice.
Yeah, the graphics for this game are really impressive because again, it kind of features that whole like far out, like really crazy, wacky theme that they're going with here, like at the game. Really good use of colors.
Yeah,
Really,
like the first thing you do is like launch a cow into space, and you have to do it. Like, it's not a side thing; it's literally something you have to do. It's like, what the heck?
Cows also come back in the sequel too, by the way.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, I mean, like I was actually reminded a lot of the like another game that we played recently. The game that we had a Shinto on for,
Clay Fighter?
yeah, because the graphics are very, very unique and very fitting for the game. Like good choice of colors. The images like very like bright, eye-popping, vivid. Like some nice pseudo 3D / scrolling effects in most of the stages. Yeah, it's very impressive. Like, graphically, this game is gorgeous. I think it holds up very well today.
Yeah.
So most of the games, the platformer, like every now and then, however, there are some racing levels. we have to do it's like the game like the game puts you in behind the perspective like a gym. You have to direct him on his rocket, and you're in a kind of a race against somebody else. It's like tube-like structure. And like most games, there's a definite reward, slash penalty, depending upon how well you do in that stage. Because if you win, you get to go to the next level immediately, whereas you lose, you have to do a boss fight.
Yeah, honestly, this was pretty creative too, because it wasn't. Yeah. It's not just Jim flying through space or whatever. Like he's sitting on this like rocket or missile or whatever it is, going through space, and it's really interesting. It kind of the way that you move around the tube. You can only go half circle. You can't go full circle around it, but it kind of reminds me of Tempest for some reason.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
kind of
sure.
got that like kind of set up. And it's interesting because you're dodging asteroids, but you're also racing to the end. You're collecting bubbles and you're collecting things that kind of like a turbocharge or something that boosts your speed for a little bit once you activate it. And you should make sure that you win the race, because if you lose the race, you have to fight the guy at the end, and that's annoying.
It definitely encourages you to get good at the race.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really a thing that comes up often, though.
Sure.
I think you only do it like 4 times, maybe?
Right, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. So it's also like, it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, we made a really cool thing, we're going to put it in like every level now or something. They're just like, no, we're just going to sprinkle it in, put in some for good measure, but not, rely too heavily on that, which is nice.
Right. Yeah, definitely. There's some other, there's some also like pretty cool variations in gameplay that also occur, as you go on with the game. I'm not sure how many of these that you saw, George, because I did finish the game. I'm not sure you did, but
I didn't, but I saw the whole game.
There's a bungee jumping stage that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you have to. It's really interesting because it's not like a health system. It's like like how strong your cable or whatever is.
Right.
You're fighting this other guy, and that was really interesting too. I think that was only like one level.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is interesting, but like, yeah, this just bungee jumping thing where you're trying to like break the other guy's cord or whatever, so he falls in and gets attacked by they were like some kind of piranha monsters or something in the water, something like that. Yeah.
There's also an underwater maze that you have to navigate. Navigate one point in the game that has a time limit. Something in the game that has a time limit with it. The maze is a little bit aggravating, but still but it's still pretty cool. It's in here. Like I said, the developers definitely did try to like spice the game up by adding different stages and variations to the gameplay, like and whatnot. And there's also a ton of humor used in this game. There's many puns, many stage names like are punny.
There's the fishbowl boss where you just knock him over.
Yep. There's also the boss names, for example. You have like Psy Cow, Queen Slug for a Butt, Evo the Cat, Bob the Killer Goldfish, Major Marcus, and Professor Monkey for a Head. You also have Chuck, who's a junkyard man, and
I hated that guy.
And Dr. Dudum, who's a organ of alien. So, and your objective in the game is to rescue. Your objective in the game is to rescue a princess, who again is very humorously called just. The name of the game is just like, what's her name?
Right.
And the ending's like pretty funny too. Did you see the ending?
Yes, I did. Like how it lands on her and like kills her or whatever.
Yeah, because Yeah, because like you go through a trouble to save her, and she's not very appreciative of being saved. And then, like, you know, in a fitting act of karma, the couch you launch, the couch launched over the game, like comes flying out of nowhere on the screen and splats her.
What, like a 1 in billion shot.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
So the humor aspects of this game are really also how make it stand out. I think like like a typical platform game this time period.
Yeah.
The music also is very, very special.
I was gonna say the like when you first boot this up and you start the first level, like it's definitely got you like straight away from like the first few notes. It's got a nice sound to it, and it's definitely fitting. It's not super weird, but it's also not like it's fitting in this kind of setting, but it's also weird enough to be this game's music.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a reason why the music though is so good. It's like, do you know who the composer was?
Who?
Like it was the famous Tommy Tallarico.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Yep.
that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
He was not credited with this game originally. He originally, when the game was published, somebody else was given credit music for some kind of like legal reason. Tommy said, but he's able to say now publicly that he's the one who did the music for the game. So, but
Awesome.
Yeah, the music's great. It's definitely like it's like a very, very good soundtrack, very fitting for the game. So
Yep.
Tommy over the years has done some like really massive music like for different games, and this one's definitely like one of the better efforts, I think. Like it's a very, very good soundtrack.
Yeah.
So because of all this like different stuff, like this like this like funky gameplay, great graphics, good music, like when the game came out, the game sold it. So the game sold and was received very, very well. Just to give you some like a quick sampling like of ideas, like of some like reviews here. EGM gave it the best Genesis game of the year. GamePro gave it a perfect score. And the Famicom Japanese magazine gave the game like 30 out of 40 points. So like very, very like good scores and reviews for both Genesis. With Genesis, like the Super NES versions of the game. Nintendo Power did a top 200 game list several years ago, and Earthworm Jim came in actually as 114th best game, like for NES. Like for a Nintendo system period. So like pretty good, like they're like across the board. So the graphics are I forgot to mention this earlier. The graphics are hand drawn. They were scanned in Super NES from probably an Amiga, because Amiga was probably a very popular system to use during this time period to do a lot of like console work. So it definitely shows. So like that kind of beautiful hand drawn fluid animation was one of the things that definitely got praised by the reviewers. As well as some of the gameplay elements, like we were saying before, the fact you're doing like different things in this game, like not just like a typical platformer game as far as the gameplay and stuff goes. The long levels, we didn't mention that. The levels are pretty long. George may find that a little frustrating at that point, but the levels have some meat to them at least, which is like good, I think. So the levels, the humor, the animations, the music, all that stuff got praised. By people who were doing the game back then. So definitely. So that's why I got a sequel. They did try. George mentioned this earlier. There was an effort made to make some other games in the franchise later on. Later on in the years, there was Earthworm Jim 3D Earthworm Jim 3D for the 64 and PC, and also Earthworm Jim Menace 2, the Galaxy, like the Game Boy Color. Those both came out in 1999. However, Shiny was not involved with making those two games, and neither one of them really did very well. The reviews of those games are pretty negative. There was a game. Curiously enough, George, I didn't know this. I didn't know this until I was doing research on the game. Earthworm Jim for the PSP was actually like planned for 2007, but that game got canceled. And also
Really?
Yep. Yeah. So
Wow.
So and also the game did spin off other products. So Playmates was successful at being able to do other stuff like this in the first place they wanted to. There was a comic book series. There were action figures. There was also like a cartoon. So all in all, they were able to. They were able to have some other success for this outside the game, which what they wanted to do like in the first place. So that's pretty cool. So there are a bunch of cheat codes and also like going on this game. Actually, there's a ton of cheat codes in this game. Probably more so than I had seen in a long time. Most of these codes can be entered like at any point in the game. You just have to like pause the game and put the codes in. They're codes. So they're codes that you do ammo refill, bring up the debug menu, extra continues, extra lives. Two versions later to life a code. One gives you one life at a time. The other one gives you infinite lives. Infinite energy refill was level skip. Map view mode. The Nick Jones code made from the developers, which causes the game to reset on you. So use that one.
Oh, great! April Fools.
One time only extra continue code. One time per stage energy refill, and a plasma power up code. So like plenty of codes.
Huh.
The Japanese version of the game had even more codes on it.
Really?
There's also code you can use to there's also code you can use to work around the various stages in the game. And also, this is curious enough. There's also a so-called strange death slash glitch death a code in the game. Basically, how this works is that certain games. This is true for games nowadays, but nowadays too. But especially if it's like games like back then. If the game was tricked in such a way that the user did something the game wasn't expecting, it wasn't handling, it can cause weird things to happen in the game because the game program doesn't know how to respond to it. Most of the time, that stuff's found before it gets released. A few times, though, it's left in by accident, because those can cause the game to crash or whatnot. A famous example of this is The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, where they had a contest in Nintendo Power that that the grand prize winner could have their name appear in the game. And it was found out later on that how Nintendo got around one of these game crashing bugs, because it's possible in the game if you have Link rush a certain number of screens and do certain actions, if you use the game code enough that the game dumps you that the game code gets confused and dumps you to a hidden room, and a hidden room has the name of the person that won the contest. So
it reminds me of that story that someone recently came out with the what was it, Sonic 3D Blast or whatever, the Genesis game, where the developers, what they did was Sega wouldn't accept the game if it crashed or whatever.
Right.
So what they did was every time it crashed, it would just bring you to a level selection screen.
Okay.
Just so happened that when you like bang the console or whatever, it would crash the game. So it would, if you just bang your console or whatever, it would just bring you to a level select. It's great. There's the developer has a video explaining the whole thing. It's really cool. Actually, very good YouTube channel.
Right.
I forget what it's called. I apologize, but some awesome stuff. They talk about how they did the Toy Story game and everything.
Okay.
Oh man, yeah. Because Toy Story had some really awesome visuals.
Oh yeah, definitely. Toy Story is gorgeous.
So definitely interesting thing.
So anyway, the reason I'm talking about this, it's possible to be able to do the same thing in this game too. It's a little bit complicated, so I'll just like pare it down to like very basic details. Basically, what happens, like I said, if you finish one of the stages in critical health, it's possible to actually take so much damage that it actually kills Jim, but the game goes on the next stage before that death for Jim can register. So when we start the next stage, Jim will just suddenly die, like for no reason, it looks like, because the death should have happened last stage, but the game didn't have a chance to calculate it correctly.
Oh no, it reminds me of Saga Frontier when I came across that bug.
I was like, I've heard there was like a similar bug. I didn't know that.
It's really weird. I probably talked about it on PlayStation Power. I'm 100% sure I told you about this, but yeah,
you probably did. I forgot.
Yeah, I lost all my health, but for some reason it let me play. But every time I went into a battle, it would just crash the game.
Oh.
And the only way to progress was to go into a set battle, so I had to start the game over again.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it was at the beginning though, but yeah, interesting stuff.
Yeah. Yep. Just goes to show that, like back then as is now, it can be very difficult to debug a game 100% and be able to figure out everything possible calculation that may cause the game to crash or act funny. So
yeah.
But anyway, so yeah. So overall, as a platform game, this is definitely original. This is like a pretty like unique, charming game, I think. So even like nowadays, I think the game still holds up like pretty well as far as platforming goes. I mean, there's some BS platforming stuff that the modern games really don't tolerate very much eventually more than our games 2018. But overall, I didn't get too frustrated playing this game. I thought the difficulty level was pretty good, scaled up like pretty well. Jim handles like well enough.
Yeah.
I really didn't feel there were too many like cheap deaths. Maybe like a few times. Some of the bosses I think are like pretty unfair, but so the graphics are still gorgeous. The music's still very good. If you're a fan of platform games, this game's definitely like and you never play this for whatever reason. This game's definitely like one to check out.
I hate to break it to you, I don't like platformers.
I know you don't, but overall. But overall, George, you did say quite a bit about but overall, having said that, you did say quite a bit about this game that you liked. So, I mean, I am glad to see that you had some positive things to say about the overall game. So.
I like watching it, but I don't like playing it.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's certainly fair.
Better be.
Do you think this game is more or less frustrating to you compared to some of the platformers that you played over the years?
Probably more, because there's more you have to do in this game compared to other ones where, usually other ones are just jumping and maybe they have some slight other things like jump pads or whatever. But this game relies on a bunch of stuff, and that's not bad, but it's certainly bad for me. So, but it's really cool to see all this creativity that they put into this game. So that's nice.
Yeah, because definitely this game definitely has a lot more going on than your typical platformer of the day. I mean, some of the stuff you have to scratch on the surface to be able to find, but there's like different ways to be able to get through certain puzzles and enemies or whatnot, or challenges to be able to do correctly. So there's definitely some good replay value to this game. Also, I think because of those reasons.
Yeah.
As you go through the game, trying to get better at certain things and whatnot. So, but yeah, a fun game. I certainly can see why. I certainly can see why anybody who's a huge fan of platformers would think very fondly of this game, like a sequel. And less said about the non-shiny developed games, the better.
Sure.
But so eBay pricing was pretty reasonable, I think. I think, considering how popular this game is still, because like I said, this game, this game sold very well. So there's a lot of copies out there, but it also has a very huge fan base. So demand for this game is pretty good. 69 copies of the game are currently listed on eBay. 106 copies of the game are recently sold. Prices are high because of that, but I wouldn't say they're like crazy high. These prices include shipping. Cart only games sold anywhere recently from $14.25 to $43. So
that's a decently big gap, but that's not bad.
No, it's not horrible.
No.
CIB has an even like bigger gap. The cheapest copies that are kind of like beat up, raggy a little bit, were $51. Whereas the most expensive, pristine, complete, like new, everything including, included, including the poster and the mailing card for registration and whatnot, was $116.70.
Oh, jeez.
So CIB pricier, but not crazy, I'd say. I mean, you're still talking reasonable prices, I think, as far as the game goes.
Any sealed copies being sold or sold before?
Not anytime recently. If there was a sealed copy, I'm probably sure a sealed copy has sold at some point in EB's past. I'd probably say, based on this, I'd probably say around $200. Probably.
Yeah, I would say so too.
Yeah. So yeah. So if you're a fan of platformers, $15 is not a crazy amount to pay for this game.
No.
So, and also, like I said, there's a lot of there's also a lot of people. There's also a lot of people who are selling this game and the sequel together, like in a bundle. So that's in a bundle for a pretty good price. Also, so you can also get some additional saves that way too if you want to. So,
right.
But anyway, yeah. Pretty good platformer game. I like platformers. I'm not as much of a platformer fan now as I was back then. I think if I played this game back when it came out as a teenager, I probably would have gotten a lot of fun out of it. The tongue-in-cheek humor and the weirdness of the game definitely makes it stand out from any other kind of platformer game like this time period. But like I said, I think even nowadays most of the game holds up pretty well today, so it's definitely a very interesting game to play. And at least George agreed with me on this, that the game is still very visually pleasing to look at, and the soundtrack is still amazing.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's going to wrap up this episode here. As always, we thank you very much for taking the time to listen to us. And to mention before, this game was a Patreon pick. If you'd like to check out our Patreon, a Patreon link, may do so at the www.patreon.com/SNES podcast. We'd like to give a shout out this time to Chad, the person who was the one who suggested this game for us in the first place. Oh shoot, you have to cut this out, George. I didn't have his name. Did not have his name handy. Hold on a second.
That's why we make notes.
Yeah, sorry. I thought I had it up. Richard. So many thanks to you for backing us. Backers of the podcast can receive benefits such as early access, being able to dictate the game for us to play, also some other cool things as well. So please check us out there, over there to enjoy some of those benefits. We're a proud member of both the Throwback Network and Retro Junkies. We can find a whole bunch of great retro themed podcasts. And George and I, we're bringing it to podcast. Something George and I were talking about off mic earlier. There have been a bunch of new podcasts recently.
Yeah. Yeah. And we haven't been paying attention to the whole scene, so it's oh, holy crap.
I am behind in podcasts big time because of various reasons.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, there are a bunch of other there are a whole bunch of other retro themed podcasts that have come out. I did not know there was a Super NES podcast out there. That apparently has been out there for more than a year at this point.
Yeah.
So they're called the Super Nintendo Exploration Squad. Which you can also find. The best way to find these podcasts, by the way, is to go to the website that Nintendo maintains, Game by Game, which is the Game by Game podcast site, which you can find at GameByGamePodcast.com. my friendly plug there. Lots of great podcasts listed on there, including their websites, RSS feeds, email, etc., etc. So
Yeah, he does a really good job with all of that.
yeah, definitely. So
And if you're doing a podcast and it's not on the list, or it's on the list but it's missing a couple of things, just email him up and he'll add that stuff. I had to email him about I think maybe email or something else to let him know that, hey, this isn't on there, and as soon as he could, he updated everything.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Definitely. Yep. I was looking for ideas. There's also a connected sister page called NoGameByGamePodcast.com.
Yes.
Which we can go through for other like things that don't have podcasts. But yeah, so recent podcasts. Saturn now has 2 podcasts out there for it.
I need to listen to that.
There was supposed to be a Neo Geo Pocket podcast, but the guy posted on Facebook last month saying real life has reared its ugly head. He's probably gonna have to give that up like right now. So
That's a shame.
maybe some point that'll come out.
I think that's like one of the cheaper things you could buy.
Mm-hmm.
The Neo Geo Pocket.
It used to be. I'm not sure how cheap it is now. I remember back in the day.
Well, still to this day, nobody still talks about it, which is a shame.
Well, I remember back in the day. I almost the price was great. I almost bought one. GameStop was selling a blowout bundle of the system and 6 games for like $20. And
wow.
So the Switch has a podcast. The N64 has 2, used to be 3 podcasts. One of them recently disappeared for some reason. We don't know why. It's very strange. So there's also now a Game Boy podcast, a TurboGrafx podcast, which one of the podcasts on here I have listened to already, and it's a great podcast. Definitely worth checking out. And the PC's now like 4 podcasts that talk about like various aspects of PC gaming like over the years. And there's also like 2 Links podcasts as well. So
I see there's a PlayStation podcast on there.
Yes, the other podcast that George and I do together, PlayStation Power. Like we cover PS1, PS2, and PSP games. Just as a warning, that one's not like family friendly. And I also see on here another podcast that you do, George.
Oh yeah, is that the one where we talk about goats? Oh wait, no, that's my secret podcast. You talking about Master System masterpieces?
Yes, sir.
All right, yeah, Master System masterpieces, where we cover games on the Master System, and maybe the Game Gear at some point. We'll see. We've probably been bringing this up for like over a year now, and we still haven't done it.
Wasn't there a pass-through device that you could play Game Gear games on your Master System?
Other way around. Master System games on the Game Gear.
Okay, alright, yeah,
you can mod your Master System and play Game Gear games, but you have to mod it. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
But the Retron 5, I believe, now you can play Game Gear games, but you have to get the adapter.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So.
But that's cool, because I actually have a bunch of Game Gear games in my Game Gear. I still need to fix the capacitors.
Yeah, I have a little bit of history like the Game Gear.
Oh, really?
Well, I never owned one, but I played one quite a bit because of like friends, cousins.
Okay.
Whatever. There was a dentist office. As a kid when I had my braces like being done, they had an available waiting room like kids to play. So like
really
cool. Yeah. So
wow.
But like the Game Boy, a lot of the games on the Game Gear are watered down console ports. But there are some very original fun games on there too. So,
I went to a special dentist when I was much younger, and they had a Neo Geo cabinet.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, Neo Geos are still fun to play today.
Yeah.
Those cabins stuck around for a long time. I think, I was still seeing them in places like laundromats and hotel lobbies until recently.
Really? Laundromats, I just see beat up, was it Galaga Ms. Pac-Man machines.
Oh yeah, multicades. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so as always, we appreciate you, checking out these hosting sites and lots of great podcasts that you can find on there also. We are available on Facebook. If you'd like to comment, or subscribe, or whatever. Our good buddy Liam just posted today, as a matter of fact, a review for Legend of Zelda: The Link to the Past, which is very, very
I
good.
saw that.
So, yeah. I love that game. It's my favorite Zelda game of all time still. So, we will have Ferg on here eventually to talk about to cover that game, so don't worry.
Oh, boy.
It is going to happen eventually.
That means I have to actually play a Zelda game that isn't Zelda 2.
I like Zelda 2, but Zelda 2 is an outlier. It doesn't really have too much.
That's like the only one I really played.
Yeah. No, but yeah. As far as the three weird NES sequels, Zelda 2, Mario 2, and Castlevania 2, Zelda's my favorite. I don't love it as much as the other games, but they're pretty good games. So, but. Anyway, you can also send me an email if you want to directly. The email is the SNESpodcast@yahoo.com. And we're also available on iTunes, where you can check it, where you can get all the episodes easily, and also give us a review if you're so inclined. George, if they're so inclined, how can they contact you?
Oh boy, well, if you ever heard of the Twitter machine, the tweet, skiddly eat. What am I saying? I'm on Twitter if you're interested, at Mr. Chief, at MISTURCHEF. That's probably about it.
Okay then. And finally, it's George's pick next time. So what game are we covering next time for this podcast, George?
Oh boy, we're covering Robo Truck, one of my draft picks, actually.
Yes, it's a very strange RPG developed by Quintet and published by Enix. Which has actually, if I remember correctly, it has some Pokemon elements to it. I think it's like you're controlling a robot.
Kind of.
Yeah. So.
We'll get into it when we cover that game.
Yeah. I remember playing the game a little bit a while back, it didn't make a big impression on me, despite the developer. So, but I will go back and play it again and give it a second look because
maybe you're missing something. I don't know.
Possibly.
I'll fill you in on a few things, and maybe you didn't notice. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. So, alrighty then. Well, as always, we always appreciate your support. Thank you again very much for listening to the podcast, and we'll catch you again next time. And in the meantime, be nice to Earthworms. You never know when one's going to get mutant powers and save the world. So, just saying.
Stay groovy.
Take care, everybody.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man.
Now you're playing with power. Super power.